Yes. Everyone. It's got 8 individuals. 2 minutes from now, I want to say thanks for your patience. We're going to start the session. So, the physical therapy, of the SP professors, and Blackstone, and come forward to the event. While we yes, very now. Lisa's here. I really welcome on behalf of the African Cultural Development Association, in collaboration with several Pan-African organizations in Guyana, has brought this meeting together. We are blessed to be the presence of our brother from Jamaica, Professor Steve Golding. Now, we are able, as you see, we have a member from Bees, have a member from the Pan-African Organization of Guyana, but there are other people who was interested in getting this together because, we are the what Marcus represented then and now the Pan-African movement, right? So you will be treated to some drum music, which is provided by the through the OTC of the Oxford Museum. Right? And with that, I ask the Karen to give us a welcome.
hello, Africa. Tell me how you doing, Africa? How you doing, Africa? How you doing, Africa? How you doing, Africa? Send me a baby in a broken heart. How you doing, Africa? Come to make a new start. Hello, hello, Africa. You doing, Africa? Hello, hello, Africa. Africa is Mount Zion. Africa is Mount Zion. Holy, 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 Mount Zion. Power in Mount Zion. Power in Mount Zion. Holy, 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 Mount Zion. Africa is Mount Zion. Africa is Mount Zion. Holy, 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 holy is Mount Zion. Drums make the world go round. Drums make the people fall down. Oh, drums make the world go round. Oh, drums, oh, drums. Drums make the world go round. Drums make the people fall down. Oh, drums make the world go round. Oh, drums, oh, drums.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Now, here is all because of Marcus's visit to Guyana in 1937, between the 22nd of August, sorry, October and the 24th of October. Now, our brother is here because what UNIA wants to do is to have such discussions going on across Caribbean on the dates on which Marcus visited the different territories. Right? So we are here to fulfill that desire. Now, many ask, what is the relevance of Garvey today in our society? Now, if you look at what the brother will do and what Garvey stood for back in time, Garvey spoke about the colonization of our minds. And his mission, the mission tonight, is all in sync with that, because the theme of the symposium is decolonizing our education system. And the brother will go through some simple concepts of Garvey that Garvey laid out for us to follow and show how we can decolonize our education system and make Garveyism a reality within the spaces that we live. With that, tonight in this discussion we have Professor Stephen Golden and Brother Braston Lagetti. They will lead us through the discourses. And with that, I introduce to you Professor.
Put that down. Sit back.
Greetings, everyone. You know, if I was in my classroom and my students came in and sat at the back, they know I would give them a full lecture about the propensity of Black people to discount and underrate themselves. And I often tell them the story of how when I attended university in the United States, the Asian students, if they didn't get a seat at the front of the class, they were upset. Their friends used to come and hold a seat for them at the front. But we, the Black students, and I was guilty of it too, we like to just sit to the class, and even if the whole of the front empty, we still take a seat at the back. And it's a habit we need to break. So I'm gonna ask you all, come forward maybe 2 or 3 rows. Don't be ashamed to sit in the front. I tell my children that I no longer attend functions unless I am VIP. And why is that? Because I'm always save the VIP seats at the front. So in my class, all my students, I teach them to think like VIP and know that they are VIP because they are very VIP to me. Greetings, Buxton. I have read and heard so much about this historic place in Guyana, being the place that as a people, when we emerged out of the suffering of the Ma'afa, our African Holocaust, Buxton was the place that we decided to build together as a community. Is this true? Well, I'm happy to be here amongst you. The UNIA ritual says that I should begin always by repeating Garvey's 2 favorite Psalms. Psalms 127 that says, unless the Lord buildeth the city, the laborer labors but in vain. And unless the Lord keepeth the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Psalm 68:31, princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth her hands unto God. If you don't mind, I would like to begin with the UNIA prayer, because we are here on the anniversary of Garvey's visit to this country, and I feel like at some point in 1937, while he was here, he would have said these very words on these very grounds. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. God of the right, our battles fight, be with us as of yore. Break down the barriers of might, we reverently implore. Stand with us in our struggles for the triumph of the right, and spread confusion ever o'er the advocates of might. And let them know that righteousness is mightier than sin, that might is only selfishness, and cannot, ought not win. Endow us, Lord, with faith and grace and courage to endure the wrongs we suffer here apace, and bless us evermore. Repeat with me. One God, one aim, one destiny. You know, I would flag you if you were my students too and make you do it again. Where's your energy? Where's your spirit? I don't business if it's 2 of us or if it's 2,000 of us. Hear me again. One God, one aim, one destiny. All right. Now the elder has already given me permission to speak. I hope you all will give me permission to take a seat. As Brother McCrae said, this is the first year we're initiating the Marcus Garvey Symposium, the Marcus Garvey groundings here in Guyana. It's part of what we call the Global Garvey Symposia series, which we began last year. And as he said before, they take place in places and spaces that Marcus Garvey himself spoke at, and on the anniversary of the dates that he did so. So we initiated the Eastern Caribbean series last year, and we had symposiums in St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent, and Trinidad and Tobago. Garvey visited all those islands in the space of about a month in 1937, traveling all the way down from Canada on the Lady Nelson, and he made port at each island once on the way down and another time on the way up. And this is the reason why the longest time he spent in any particular island or country was in Guyana, because Guyana was the final destination of Lady Nelson. It was here for 3 days before it made the journey back up to Canada. So whereas Garvey stopped in, say, St. Lucia on the 17th and again on the 29th, in Trinidad on the 20th, and then on the 26th in Barbados on the 18th of October, and then again on the 28th, he was in Guyana for 2 to 3 consecutive days. As I understand it, he held several meetings, one of them on Charlotte Street, which I was told at our session last night, still remembers Garvey, and that building has been associated, you know, with Afrocentricity and African liberation, just as it was before Garvey arrived here. And I've heard, as I've told you, I know the history of Buxton, and I think this is a fitting place for me to introduce to you our feature of the symposium this year. Last year, we screened the first movie ever made about Marcus Garvey on those 4 islands. This year, we've added to the roster not only Guyana, but also Dominica and St. Kitts. And the feature to learn nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are an important tool for teachers because it teaches children not only rhythm and vocabulary, but also it uses memorization as a tool of education, right? But we found that the nursery rhymes that we are still teaching our children today are the same nursery rhymes that we have been teaching for generations. And if you ever look into the history of these nursery rhymes, you will realize that these nursery rhymes go back as much, some as 300-400 years. Some of them written in the 17th century, while we are now in the 21st century. And no one has stopped to think and pause, well, why are we still teaching these age-old nursery rhymes to our children that have no cultural relevance to them? And before I continue, I have to do a test to make sure you all know what I'm talking about when I say these nursery rhymes, right? Let me test you. Humpty Dumpty. You learned them. London Bridges. Mary, Mary. Baba. Simple Simon. A diddle diddle. What the next line? And what about Humpty Dumpty? So we're still teaching them to our children. I three, they knew them too. Not saying that that's what we teach them at that school, but you know, the home is the first school and your parents are your first teachers. But the fact is, 300-400 years later, we are still teaching our children Eurocentric nursery rhymes. And the reason we have to ask ourselves the question why is all of the nursery rhymes that you've learned have a history. Jack, remember? Jack jump over there. That was about a famous British pirate who had a plan for escaping from captivity. Mary, Mary. This is about Mary, Queen of Scots, and her obsession with a new tool in her day called the French guillotine that she would use to cut off people's heads. This is the cockle shells. London bridges. That was written while they were actually building London Bridge, and part of it collapsed. A lot of people died. And the sad part is, at the time that most of these nursery rhymes were written, they were written by people from a nation that was participating in the brutalization of our own ancestral land and our own ancestors. Three Blind Mice, for example, written in 1609. The Grand Old Duke of York, written in 1642. And the Duke of York was a part of the British company linked to the crown that granted John Hawkins the first charter to traffic Africans. The Duke of York himself was enriched by the transatlantic slavery, as they call it, or the Maafa, as the word is in Swahili, the Maangamizi, the great disaster, the African Holocaust. Baba Black Sheep, written in 1744. Where were our ancestors at that time? They weren't in schools learning these nursery rhymes. They were on the plantations suffering under the whip. Hey Diddle Diddle, 1765. In fact, very few of them, and there are none in my book, that were written before the British, for example, gave us, quote unquote, emancipation. But yet we are still teaching our children these things. And we are oblivious to the fact that we may be planting the very subliminal, subconscious seeds of white supremacy into their minds at such an early stage. Then we wonder why they grow up to doubt themselves as a people and to lack cohesiveness and confidence in themselves as a people. But if from an early age you only tell them about kings and queens being in Spain and London. Check this out. Baba Black Sheep, what the next line? Come on, you know it. Don't act like you don't know it now. Own up your mistakes. Baba Black Sheep. Yes, sir, yes, sir. One for the, say it louder. One for who? One for the, that's the next line. One for the day. And one for the, who? Who is the master? Who is the day? And why does the little boy live down the lane if he's not living in the house with the master and the dame? Obviously, he's not their son. Why does he live down the lane? Let me show you another ridiculous one. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down. Last line. What's the fair lady have to do with London Bridge falling down? And why the lady have to be fair? I mean, this works for English children. That's their history. That's their culture. But why are we teaching young black or even Indian children in Guyana about London Bridge falling down, my fair lady? Why are we teaching young African children that one is for the master? Meaning the man must get paid first, then the day, and then the little boy gets what's left down the lane. This is what I mean by subconsciously compromising our children racially, psychologically. You know, Marcus Garvey once said, don't give your children white dolls to play with because they will grow up to want to be white. And we have to be honest in ourselves in recognizing that he was right. How many young black girls put the towel on their head in my day? I grew up with two sisters. They put the towel on their head and they brush the towel. They brush the towel, you know. Because they were, oh yeah, look at them laugh. They remember. You remember doing that? They brush the towel because they want to have European type hair that's long. Because their nursery rhymes are not infused with teaching them pride in their own racial history. I mean, nursery rhymes are something simple, but they're not that simple. I have a grandmother who lived to be 100 years old. She died a little bit before she turned 101. Towards the end of her life, her memory began to fail her. She couldn't remember the names of her grandchildren. But she had 7 children, so she had like double-digit grandchildren. Now, this wasn't a grandmother who was not around. We all, every summer, stayed with her. She would have a house full of grandchildren, taking care of them. Her children would just send the kids for summer with her. And she was a great grandmother. Loved to get up, cook breakfast, make tea for us in the morning. She lived for this. At the end of her life, she couldn't remember who we were. But you know what she remembered? She remembered a nursery rhyme she learned at 3 years old. She remembered a memory verse she said in church when she was 5 years old. And she would quote it to you word for word. This is how impactful these years are on a young mind as it's being formed. And the first thing we choose to feed that mind is one for the master. And my fair lady, we got to be crazy. We got to be out of our minds. The very year that Marcus Garvey came from Canada to the Caribbean, in October, at the start of that month, on October 1st to be exact, he made a speech in Menelek Hall in Nova Scotia, Canada, in which he said, we are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, for whilst others have freed our bodies, none but ourselves can free our minds. A couple decades later, Bob Marley used that quote in a song. A lot of people today think is Bob Marley said it. But no, Garvey said it. And just a few weeks before he came to Guyana. So that was his frame of thought. That's where his mind was as he toured the Caribbean. That was his new philosophy, brand new. The emancipation of our people from mental slavery. And that is why he is the inspiration behind what we call repairing the narrative to decolonize the educational curriculum, particularly at the early childhood level. Because a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. That's a dead tree, an empty vessel. And we cannot choose to fill it with songs and rhymes that glorify others while tearing down ourselves. So let's look at some of the repaired narratives. I know the cameraman don't like when I get up. Remember what we've done in the Daddy Marcus nursery rhymes is repaired the narrative. So we've taken out the old British narratives and replaced them with our own Caribbean narratives. A lot of them speak about Jamaican culture, Rastafari culture, but many of them also speak about African history and African culture. We've written this book as a teaching tool for teachers as well. So we've changed the title. The Grand Old Duke of York is now the Great Ras Makonnen. But it tells you that the Grand Old Duke of York, which we are repairing, was written in 1642. And at the bottom of the page, it gives you the cultural and historical significance of the new narrative. So let me read, for example. We no longer say the Grand Old Duke of York. We don't want to glorify them. We don't want to teach our children about them because they enslaved our ancestors. What we have done, at the bottom I'm reading now, is to teach them about the Battle of Adwa, which was the climactic battle of the first Italo-Ethiopian War. The Ethiopian forces defeated the Italian invading force on Sunday, the 1st of March, 1896, near the town of Adwa. Makonnen Wolde Mikael, or simply known as Ras Makonnen, was a Shoan royal military leader, the governor of Harar province in the Ethiopian Empire and the father of Tafari Makonnen, who would later come to be known as Emperor Haile Selassie I. This is for the teachers. In fact, when I sent this book to the Ministry of Education to review it, their commentary was that this is not a book to just buy and to give the children to read on their own. And more so had to be, but that's exactly how I wrote it. I spent many years teaching teachers how to teach Garveyism. And so we created this as a tool for them to use in the classroom and also to inform themselves. Because teachers can't teach something they themselves haven't learned. And so the book seeks to not only inform the teacher and teach the teacher so that they can better teach the student. You know that old nursery rhyme? The Grand Old Duke of York? You ever heard this one? He had 10,000, he had what? He had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill and he marched them down again. And when they were up, and when they were down, and when they were neither, and or when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down. All right. I told you what the Duke of York was involved with, right? So we got rid of that. We repaired that. We dashed that way, as we say in Jamaica. And we've created here, repaired it to say the Great Ras Makonnen. Oh, the Great Ras Makonnen. He had 100,000 men. He marched them up to Adwa and he marched them down again. When they were up, and their flag, it never came down. They fought for their Emperor Menelik and saved Ethiopia's crown. This is a true story. The Italians were defeated, the only time an African country defeated an invading European country attempting to colonize Africa, right? And the mistake the Italians made was that they thought the army of Ethiopia was just the emperor's army, which was about 100,000 men. But they didn't realize that every Ras, every Negus, every Dejazmat had an army assigned to him. So when the emperor issued the cry that we go into war, he came with his 100,000 soldiers, but Ras Makonnen came with his 100,000, and next Ras came with 70,000. By the time the Italians took to the battlefield, they were outnumbered 10-1. 10-1. And of course, they lost. So these are the things we want to teach our children in these nursery rhymes, because we can't teach them about the grand old Duke of York and then go into the history of the Duke of York. Who was the Duke of York? He was a terrible man, at least to us and to our people. So why spend time putting that into our children's mind? Baba Black Sheep, I don't like that one. You know why? So we changed Baba Black Sheep to Bobo Ashanti. The Bobo Ashanti is a house of Rastafari that as children growing up in Jamaica, we used to see them in these splendid robes. They would be on the street selling brooms, long brooms to get cobwebs, short brooms for your car, sweeping brooms. Everybody bought brooms from them. They used straw to make the brooms. It became an industry for their compound, which is known as Bobo Hill. This is inspirational if you think about it. This is Garveyism. So instead of Baba Black Sheep, which was written in 1744, we teach our children, Bobo Ashanti, have you any brooms? Yes, Aya, because the Bobo Ashanti talk very colorfully. 3 bags full. 1 for the prophet, and 1 for the priest, and 1 for the black king crowned in the east. Seal it up, right? That's also reflective of the Bobo Ashanti culture. They see the men within their society as being either prophet, kings, or priests, right? Now, we come from a conservative culture in the Caribbean, and some parents will jump up immediately, well, why are we teaching our children that? Well, ask them why they're teaching them Baba Black Sheep after almost 300 years. What relevance does that have to them? Yet they're going to see Rastafari about them everywhere, because it's a part of our culture as Africans in the Caribbean. We can't be ashamed of it. We must embrace it. What's another favorite one I have in here? Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little boy laughed to see such fun, and that's a favorite one. My brother was telling me that it has African origins, but I'm still not going to encourage you to teach your children about cow jumping over the moon. In fact, many Jamaican dub poets and artists always choose that nursery rhyme when they want to point out how ridiculous it is, some of the things that we teach our children. Muta Baruka, for example, did a dub poetry talking about dish running away with the spoon and cow jumping over the moon, right? So we repaired that one from A Diddle Diddle, written in 1765, to A Jinga Jinga. Now, Jinga is the basic move about African martial arts that they call capoeira, that the enslaved Africans in Brazil used to practice, but they had to make it look like a dance because they didn't want the Portuguese to know that they were preparing for Ndongo and Matambe kingdoms. Her name was Queen Njinga. In the West, a lot of people call her Queen Nzinga. So here is the repaired Hey Diddle Diddle. Get rid of that. Hey Jinga Jinga, Angolan Queen Nzinga, met a Portuguese governor she greeted. Not a chair would he offer, so her warrior proffered his back for the queen to be seated. If you know the story of Queen Nzinga, Ana Nzinga as the Portuguese call her, there's a story of when the Portuguese governor called her to a meeting, and to show his dominance, he had chairs put out for him and his compatriots, and he left no chair for the queen to sit. Instead, he put a mat on the floor, and she was meant to sit on the floor below the Portuguese to negotiate with them. When the queen arrived, she realized immediately what was going on. And without needing to say a word, her soldiers, noticing what happened, one of the soldiers stepped forward immediately, got down on all fours, and offered his back so that the queen could be seated at the same level as the Portuguese governor. Hey, Jinga Jinga, Angolan Queen Nzinga, met a Portuguese governor she greeted. Not a chair would he offer, so her warrior proffered his back for the queen to be seated. I think that's much better than teaching our children about dish running away with the spoon and cow jumping over moon. So this book is filled not only with our history as Africans in the Caribbean, but going back to Africa of our ancestral homeland. Look at this one. You recognize that tree? That's a ganja tree. I was waiting for the ministry to say something to me about it. Again, the conservative nature of our culture. But this one is repairing My Little Nut Tree, which was written in 1789. You know this one? Came to visit me, and all for the sake of my... Why it have to be the King of Spain? Why we have to teach children? There's another one said, pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? I've been to London to visit the Queen. Why every time we're talking about kings and queens, it have to be London and Spain, and that's what we're teaching children in Guyana. So when they grow up, of course, they're going to want to go to London and Spain. You put that in their brain from them was 3 years old. And you wonder why they want to go. You glorified it to them at such an early age that when they get to my grandmother age, they may not even remember your name. But they're going to remember about the king in Spain and the queen when the pussycat was under our chair. Stop doing it. We repaired that one. We don't talk about My Little Nut Tree. We talk about My Little Herb Tree. I had a little herb tree. Nothing would it grow but a silver moringa and a golden thinking toe. You guys know what thinking toe is? What they call it the same thing here? Yes, the fruit. Yes. In Jamaica, in our patois, we say thinking toe. You know, but it makes a very nice juice, right? I had a little herb tree, nothing would it grow but a silver moringa and a golden thinking toe. The king of Ethiopia came to visit me, and all for the sake of my little herb tree. Now, our story tells the story of when Haile Selassie came to the Caribbean, and the reason he came to the Caribbean to meet the Rastafari, who we heard had been worshiping him. And I mean, this is a great compliment. I don't know if you ever hear say some people way across the world worshiping you, you would want to come and meet them too yourself, right? And so, again, infused with our history, nothing in these repaired narratives are being made up. I'm not putting rhymes together because they sound good. I am infusing it with history, culture that is relevant to us, that we can relate to, because none of us was around when London Bridge was built and it fell down. And that was 300 years ago. Who cares anymore? That is not going to help our young students grow up to be confident in who they are and their place in the world as kings and queens themselves. They're going to always be looking to Spain and England for royalty, because you planted that in their brain at that critical age where they were forming their thoughts. I'll give you one more before I hand over to my brother here. And since we're talking about Marcus Garvey, I haven't done this one since I've been here. Yes, this is the only nursery rhyme that we have repaired that was written after the abolition of slavery. This one is based on an American nursery rhyme called I Saw a Ship A-Sailing, and it was written in 1905. So some of us, and you all know that one? I saw a ship a-sailing, sailing on the sea, and there were some, the ship was being sailed by ducks. is the Black Star Line. And it says, I saw a ship sailing on the sea, forward from Africa with things for you and me. There were coconuts in the cabin and rubber in the hold. The sails were made of hemp and the masts were made of gold. The 24 sailors that stood upon the decks were 24 black men, no chains about their necks. The captain wore a plumed hat, his uniform was fine, and when the ship began to move, he shouted, Black Star Line. Clap me for that one, I love that one. And of course, our story tells you the story of Garvey's Shipping Corporation and the reason he founded it, which was to trade amongst our people between Africa and the diaspora. The line that says there were coconuts in the cabin, one of the first shipments that the Black Star Line actually undertook was taking coconuts from Cuba back to America, right? The plumed hat, you know that famous picture of Garvey in his uniform. He wore a plumed hat, his uniform was fine, and when the ship began to move, he shouted, Black Star Line. Thank you.
May I have a second round of applause? I met you yesterday. You first right with the audience.
After you talk, we'll do some Q&A and do some more.
Okay. I was I first remember what you read, but I also remember that when I was a very small boy, I was 3 or 4 years old, that back in school, that I learned family prayers, okay? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, okay? And the God will all Father, who art in heaven, one to the evil justice of God. Yes. Right. And then what the great on my life, you know. There was also, I went like the first education, very cool, and who think that from some so there are lots of things you don't so that but these nursery rhymes stay with you forever and ever. I but I still remember the nursery rhymes. Yeah. So for me, this is an innovation, and I want to talk a little bit about innovations, okay? And I hope that we will understand the significance and the meaning of it, and how we could fulfill the mission of through education, right? Now talking about innovation, okay? I went up to the bauxite industry in 1970. And during that time, I was chemist of the alumina plant. And the alumina plant, they manufactured using bauxite and caustic soda into sodium aluminate. And then they would seed it and get the alumina and put it in a ship and send it to Canada. And a lot of that sort of thing I got experience. Now, when I left the bauxite industry, okay, there was a need in Georgetown. In fact, they were retrenching workers at brass, aluminum, cast iron foundry, and I call this processing foundry, because they couldn't get sodium silicate. They use a brand name, okay? So somebody approached me. Yes, I was approached, but also some technicians who worked with me and was at the University of Guyana Institute of Applied Science and Technology said, oh, they'll get you know for good and things. So what did I do? I innovated. In the alumina plant, we use bauxite and caustic soda. And you know what I use? I use silica and caustic soda. But the silica was not the silica on the highway. The silica was from the rice industry, where when you
mill the paddy. There's rice and there is, what do you call it? Husk, right? Now that husk here is very high in silicon. So I use that and with the caustic soda and made sodium silicate. I remember making 24 gallons one time, 12 gallons I sent to GNIC, Proston's Foundry, I still call it, and Brass Aluminium Cast Iron Foundry. Within a day or two, both businesses called me and said they want some more. But that is because one could innovate from what had nursery rhymes of 17 something, 18 something, 16 something, you know, and we were able to change them into a language that is more relevant to our culture here, you know. I thought I will make a comment about innovation, okay, and hope that we could we could recognize it and hope that we will focus on some innovation to do some things. So among other my duties that I have here is to open the floor to the audience because there's question time. Is also one who want to ask questions. And also I want to make an announcement that in fact the nursery rhymes are here for sale. And if anyone wants to buy it, please let me know. The floor is open for questions. Any questions?
Thank you for interesting presentation. And I would like to recommend the student. It's only a good point to make about the conditioning we see from early childhood. My early recollection from Battlefield as a kid is Jamaican, is called Jamaican. Social media, you find out what that is all about.
Yes.
What I want to recommend is not only what you said about the nursery rhyme, but that we must begin to include our familiar
Folk
stories in a lot of the material that we use for our education system, because those songs are danger of passing out with the generation that we remember. So I would start to suggest that when we do the nursery rhymes, we hear quality in our English pronunciation. It's not so much in single as single. I think you want that, but so that we learn for the power pronunciation.
Jinga.
And Jingle.
Excellent point about the folk songs.
Any questions over here or comments?
Yes, nice to meet you. The only question I have, what is that story? Colonization of our education system. What do you think? Has it done something that we can be fighting as well, starting something that we should really emulate. That's serious. We have some young people who still in school. What do you think about learning experiences? What do you comment?
Thank you. Let's be I listened to your presentation, and then I began to wonder when you will up there, what's the next step? We will move here. Is there talk of creating to carry on, or we have to wait until next 3 years to sort of move and come back?
Well, if you get the book, you'll have the book. But if you're talking about in terms of the Garvey organization, I am willing, if there are people here who are interested in forming themselves into a division of the UNIA, certainly we will exchange contacts and I can help guide you in that process. UNIA is an organization, we turned 111 this year. And I know a lot of times amongst the Pan-African circles, there are a plethora of organizations that we are active with. But I like to remind people that the UNIA is the grandfather of them all. And so we don't want to present the UNIA as an alternative to organizations that already exist and are working in the communities. But we do offer it as the umbrella organization that can be the shell company that brings all the different Pan-African organizations together. So if you are interested in helping us organize and establish that here in Guyana, please see me after. Let's exchange numbers. Let's begin to communicate and I can help guide you through that process. Very good questions.
No, I think this one. Are there anything for the books? I would like to know. So the professor can sign. The books are still.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Professor, for gracing our village with your presence in our country. This is very timely intervention at this time in Guyana. I want to say you're continuing a tradition in the Caribbean that was actually started by the mighty Sparrow. We all would know Dan is the man in the van. And in 1979, it's London Bridge is falling down, it's falling down. And what Sparrow was doing, and he did it in other calypsos, was critiquing that nursery rhyme. And I think what our brothers done here, he has gone beyond critiquing and constructing an alternative. So I think it follows in that tradition that is very healthy in our Caribbean, that it's interesting that we still remember the nursery rhymes, but we also critique them in our own ways because our poets and our singers have always critiqued that which we remember. So I always like to see it as part of the larger process that even as we are surviving, we are breaking the walls of the old colonial edifice. So I thank the brother for what he has done in extending the tradition of critique and reconstructing something new. I just also want to say that Marcus Garvey is, we didn't spend too much time on him, but he's easily the most important Black leader of the 20th century. By far, the 20th century produced Black giants. Garvey's contemporaries were W.B. Du Bois, C.L.R. James, and Booker T. Washington, just to name some of the giants. And when you examine the ideologies and the leaders that came out of that movement, Garvey stood out. We are all Garveyites as Black people. We are all Garveyites. It's as you go through Garvey's philosophy, and I've had the opportunity to teach Marcus Garvey at university, and as you go through Garvey's philosophy, everything that we do or we don't do today as Black people, you trace it right back to Marcus Garvey. Walter Rodney once said that if there wasn't Marcus Garvey, the person, they would have had to be a Marcus Garvey. And so it's opportune to reinsert Garvey into the popular consciousness. We in Guyana, on that same 1937 tour that Garvey did, the question was being raised about Guyana being home to what is now Israel. And Garvey, and there was a Garveyite organization here in Guyana, very strong. Tom would know that very well. And they were the ones who stood up and said, no, not in Guyana. They had considered Guyana and Uganda to bring the Israelis. And it not been for the Garveyites and others who argued, but also the Israelis weren't too keen on coming here. They wanted what they call the homeland. But as we look what's happening in Gaza today, it might have been happening right here in what we call Guyana. And the Garveyites were very important. Marcus Garvey himself on that tour raised that question that not in Guyana. For us who are Rastafarians, and I think you referenced that in one of your rhymes, nursery rhymes. For us who are Rastafarians, Garvey is the prophet of Rastafarians. You know, he wrote a play in which he predicted that a king will rise in the east. He himself was the lead actor in the play. And it was the Jamaicans, who we now call Rastafarians, when they saw Rastafari, who is now, we know as Haile Selassie, when they saw his coronation, they said that's what Garvey was talking about. And so Garvey is the prophet of the Rastafarians. I mean, we know that the deity is Selassie, but Garvey is equally important. And I think it's born in Spear sang Marcus Garvey words come to pass, right? So Garvey is larger than life. And I would like to urge us here, you know, sometimes we are a little down-spirited when we don't see the hall full. But each of us here should become a Garveyite. And really in whatever we do, whether we are teaching in schools or we are teaching in clubs, we have to become Garveyite gorillas and to find ways and means of bringing our people into an identification with a Marcus Garvey. That's where the term identity comes from. We were chatting before, and he was making the point that we may say that our young people are not grounded in African culture, but they are fervent followers of reggae music. And the message and the origins of reggae music came out of the Rastafari movement. Rastafari movement came out of Garveyism. So we can say that reggae music goes right back to Garvey. So we have this conundrum of our young people, on the one hand, appearing not to pay attention to African culture, but they are the biggest. I mean, I'm amazed that, you know, the DJ would put on Bob Marley's song, and Bob Marley sang about politics. And these young people go crazy. Or Peter Tosh, you know, everyone is crying out for peace, but no one is crying out for, and young people go crazy. So I think we have what is a conundrum in that young people appear not to be into African culture. But when you put the symbols of African culture before them, they eat it up as if they were born into it. So I'm so glad for this, because we have a chance to show how we can use our culture to water the present. I myself, I'm starting a course called Pan-Africanism. It's an online course, 7-week course, Introduction to Pan-Africanism. And 2 of the modules would be on Garvey, because Garvey was perhaps the most important Pan-African leader. And his movement was at the center of the Pan-African movement. So it's an opportunity for us to engage a lot of our past, which is there, but, you know, we don't talk about it. I'm sure so many of you here tonight would have learned that emancipate yourself from mental slavery is not Marley's words. Marley took those words, as Professor told us, from Marcus Garvey at Menelik Hall in Nova Scotia, who uttered the words. And Marley, who was a student of Garvey, took it and turned it into song. So some of us would have learned that here tonight. Marley did that also. The famous song War. They're not Marley's words. Haile Selassie. A speech to the United Nations, and Marley turns it into song. All right? And if you go through a lot of reggae music, there are references to speeches made by great, outstanding African leaders that are there. But it takes a session like this to bring that home to us. So, brother asked, what do we do from here? And this, I think, is an opportunity to inspire us to begin to organize ourselves, use the tools at our disposal. Our brother Kwame Ture, former Stokely Carmichael, he never spoke. He always said, organize, organize, organize. And sometimes we have to work above board, and sometimes we have to work below board. As Peter George, our prophet, here in Boxer would say, making the board all, not the yearly, right? So sometimes we have to fool the oppressors. And there is, let me end and say this, there is a grand plan to wipe the face of Africa, to wipe Africa off the face of Guyana. Some of us may not realize it. You know, people are celebrating the fact that young black people are not into education. They're not into conscious reggae. They're not into calypso. There are people who are not African who are celebrating those things. All right? There's no way in which they can put us physically in chains, but Marley, Garvey was perceptive. What's perceptive is this. And Marley took it to the next level. No chains on my feet, but still, I'm not free. And that's what we are fighting in Guyana, is the extinction of the African consciousness history from this country. And when it's gone, We'll find out. So thank you, brother. Thank you.
I want to respond just briefly because the brother made some excellent points, and particularly Garvey warned us about the extinction of the African.
Yes.
And he didn't mean that there wouldn't be black people physically here anymore. He was talking about the extinction of the African identity by us being absorbed by other cultures. Excellent point. Excellent history there. Yes, I had heard of Guyana as an alternative for Uganda. Marcus Garvey is actually recorded as saying he believes in Palestine for the Jew. So he did support a state in Israel, and that's perhaps why he was against them coming to Guyana. Very good point about reggae music too, but I think right now we are in danger of losing the consciousness of reggae music. I mean, we have reggae rhythms, but what are these artists nowadays really talking about? You know, Marcus Garvey was a journalist. He was constantly informed about what was happening in the world, particularly in Africa. And so in 1929, when he wrote the play, The Coronation of an African King, he had already been in touch with Rastafari Makone. Garvey had so Garvey knew, as Ethiopians knew, that Rastafari would be crowned Emperor Haile Selassie, because he was made crown prince from 1916, when Empress Saudito came to the throne. So it wasn't that he was writing a play that was some mystically prophetic. He knew Haile Selassie was coming to the throne. What he did, and many, and the particular journalist of his time by the name of Joel Augustus Rogers, who was a friend and a contemporary of Garvey, who actually went to Ethiopia and covered the coronation and brought the news to Africans in this. So Garvey was a prophet and he was prophetic. There are many things he predicted. But his engagement with Ethiopia was more than just prophecy. It was a practical, before Garvey was looking to Liberia as a platform of repatriation, he had begun negotiating with the Ethiopians. It just turned out that that distance was a little far, but he also inspired Haile Selassie with the idea of repatriation, which His Majesty then offered as a gift after the second Italian invasion, as a gift of thanks for the support that he got from Africans in the diaspora. So the two are very much connected, as the Bobo Ashanti say, prophet, priest, and king.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good night, everyone. This is a very good forum. I heard the news this afternoon and, said, let me take a walk. And I decided to come over to see and to hear what this because the children come to the secondary schools and they can hardly participate in singing and all these sorts of things. I remembered as a teacher in training, I had Miss Edith Peters used to have us going to choir, and we learned all their songs in the Caribbean, the folk songs. I remember this very one, Carry Me Aki, Go a Linstead Market, the Jamaican folk song. And, you know, it really used to hold you. Today we have nothing to hold our children. All that we have is just, you know, just go to school and do maths and English, whatever it is, but no cultural, nothing. We don't have singing really to grasp their attention, to make them want to come to school. And I think that what our brother over here said is that we may have to begin something within the village and start to teach them these very nursery rhymes and do our reggae singing. And the Jamaican folk songs really do catch me a lot. And I think those children would like it. They will like it, but if they have to get people to teach them, but these things will not be taught in the schools. So if we depend on schools to help these children in the community or in the secondary schools, we will not get it. So I think we will have to form that community and teach the children in the village. That's what I have to offer.
Thank you very much. We have books on sale, so it says anywhere. I'll appreciate some more. Has anyone in the audience read "Look for Me in the Whirlwind"? Look for me in the whirlwind, and I will come and aid in life, in liberty, and in freedom.
Sorry, what?
To the speaker again. I want to touch on what the brother was saying earlier, and what I think he was trying to do is what needs to be done for clarity. And that is what is lacking in Black society, clarity. And the only way you get clarity is when you connect the dots. And that is what he was doing, because that's how I know what I know. Where Rastafari concerned. And our guest mentioned it, you know, in that certain specific things he spoke about. Like even when he spoke about Haile Selassie and Marcus Garvey. The dots come with like Marcus Garvey wasn't just taking people to Liberia, like you said. Really, it was about Ethiopia first and foremost, just like you said. Because Marcus' anthem was Ethiopia, the land of our father, the Ethiopian anthem. And he did say, let the white man, I read that in the philosophies, let the white man take the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and be saying that's his God. But we black people shall see God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. And this is what was spoken to Africans at that time. And at that time, all Africans were one, because there was no Guyana, no Jamaica. These were British Empire. We now think we're Guyanese and we Jamaicans and we Trinidadians. But at the time, Ethiopia was at war, there was none of these countries, only Liberia. And so all Africans were one, defending Ethiopia. That's why Marcus spoke about Ethiopia. And he had some doubts because, Ethiopia is the only place that was left at the time. So when I talk about connecting the dots, this was lacking in the youth. Because the same thing that gave me the wisdom is the same thing will give them the wisdom. And the same thing that gave Marcus Garvey the wisdom, that's what he said, as written on the banner there. A people without knowledge of their past history and culture is like a tree without roots. And this is what you were doing when you speak of Bob Marley and reggae and the music. And that's exactly what is lacking. And that's what the nursery rhymes, how he framed it now, is what's lacking is the blackness. And I must mention Traore because everything is in real time. And that's what we're lacking now. I gotta say, it had nothing to do with Burnham, but in Burnham's time, that is where Africans was in this country. We were sharp, we were into real time. Chinese are into real time right now. We have dropped back in Guyana particularly, but it's great to see Traore in Africa come, bringing us back into real time because he's on it. I give thanks for the brethren and what he's doing there, and I know 2025 is, you could see the changes, Respect.
Thank you, Majesty. I like when he told the story of his grandmother. That his grandmother became arrived at 100 years old and couldn't remember the names of our grandchildren, yet she could remember the nursery rhymes that she was introduced to when she was probably 4 or 5 years old, and so on and so forth. And I always, when I got the invitation, I remember that also because I had, when I was at tertiary education, I remember writing home a letter, and I quoted, "Hey, the cat and the fiddle and the cow that jumped over the moon," So, any other questions I can ask? Questions? Yes. I'd like to get some questions.
In which he is going to want to make a contribution. But while you're emphasizing questions, Brother Dargetti, I want to, you can translate what I say into as many questions as you want, but I've been making some notes which I really want to make sure that we understand. In terms of wiping Guyana off the mapping, hit that Africa over, I think it's going to fail. Because the way things are turning out in the rest of the world is that I see even the Russians are making the remark that Africa is waking up. And what they mean is the revolution that is happening in the Sahel. So the timing in attempting to wipe Africa off the map in Guyana is going to be very bad. But we have to do our part to make sure. Just like how many of us don't know about the contribution of Haiti, that has been wiped off of our minds, we have got to make sure that whoever intends for Africa to be wiped off of the map in Guyana don't succeed. So that's, please translate that into whatever question you want. In terms of the contribution of Garvey, I want to suggest that everybody who does not understand the contribution, look at this film with Ariana Fonte, Island in the Sun. And what you will see is all the black people in that film, practically all of them stand up and they got their eyes down. What I understand is that when Garvey spoke, you could literally see
black people, that he said, "Up, you mighty race." You could literally see the black people in the crowd standing straight. So if you don't understand the contribution of Garvey, look at that movie, and remember that story about Garvey's words. In terms of what we are going to achieve, this brother made a point about what we intend to do after. And I want to say that I really would appreciate practical stuff coming out, not so much a club. The brother mentioned Sparrow. Again, there's a calypso in my mind that changed the Caribbean, black people's behavior, especially Caribbean. I've never seen anything like it. And we don't. They have heard about what is going on in Burkina Faso, what Traoré is doing. It's a French-speaking country, but they are there making sure that they keep track of what is going on so that they can also lend whatever hand they could. Perhaps we need a newsletter as to what, as to develop this relationship across, because that is what Garvey was about, not just the ship, not just the business, but the exchange of assistance and help. And of course, you got sabotage. So I want to see some practical things coming out. And somebody mentioned allies. Don't forget, again, this is why they're not going to succeed. Because apart from the Russians and the Chinese, we have allies. There's again a Chinese girl who I looked at, and she was talking about people going onto our website and criticizing and praising the Asians against black, saying that they're comparing them with black people in the United States. And that Chinese young lady, I don't know how she knows that, but it just goes to show people around the world know about Rodney. They know about Garvey more than we do. That Chinese girl, she looked like about 30. She said, I see white people coming onto my site and making statements where they weren't invited to. But I want to let you know. And she went into history about what they did to the Chinese and put them in black areas to sell and create hostility. But here's one thing she said. She said, I see you are using the word woke in a bad way. I want you to know that woke came out of the Marcus Garvey effort to awaken his people. I see you are using it, you're squatting on the word and using it in a bad way. Try to understand where it came from. That's enough.
Very good points there, brother. Just to inform you, yes, the UNIA was a part of a coalition of Afro descendants that sent a delegation to Burkina Faso. We met with the vice president. What we're in the process of doing now is creating a skills bank. I mean, the response from them was that they needed help, they needed skilled people to come and help build up the country. I was particularly interested in their educational system. Teaching Garveyism in Africa is something I think needs to be done. But there were other areas. We also discussed the fact that they were manufacturing a car. And I inquired as to whether we could help them distribute and sell that car here in the diaspora and that is a solid financial way for our people to support them without it getting too complicated. I mean, we all want cars and so forth. But the response was that they don't while they have produced it, they don't have the capacity to meet the quantity. So they do need a lot of help in the country building up, but they're in the process of, they've tasked us with creating a skills bank to find out people who want to help and how they can help and in what capacity they think they can help. So thank you for raising that issue. The UNIA is very much on the ball. As I said, we work with a number of organizations across the globe. We don't have to be everywhere all the time because our people are everywhere all the time. We just try to stay in touch with our people. But excellent points you brought up there. And one of the practical things you all can do is get a copy of the book and get it into the hands of your children or your grandchildren so we can start that decolonizing the mind process tonight.
Okay, good people. We started a bit late, but we also must go because now it's after 9:30, I think. And we had asked the society or to only allow us to use the facility up to a certain time. We don't want to be abusive of the privilege. Okay, the brothers who is in charge of the facility indicated we can use go another half hour. So if you have any comments, let us do that quick. And because
Come get a copy of your book.
come get a copy of the book. But before you get a copy of the book, maybe if there are no more comments, I will call on a Bostonian if there are any volunteers to do a vote of thanks. If they are not, then I will identify one. Teacher Eagle.
Hi, Jambo brothers and sisters. I am not in the mood tonight, but because at your presence in our village, it's always welcome. And brother, Jamaican brother, you are our brother. Your people would have educated us through music for years. Brother Bob, Peter Tosh, all of those, I know Marcus Garvey. They have enlightened us on this part of the continent with what Black culture should really be like, how to be Afrocentric. This is nothing new to us. We Bostonians, it's nothing new to us. We have always been at the forefront of all us. The poetry, the books, the nursery rhymes. You were right. I can remember nursery rhymes from way back. I can remember all of those rhymes that you spoke about tonight. But that book that you have there, it's a book that is needed here. But as my sister down there said, we would have to do the implementing of what's going on in that book. Because if you look to the Department of Culture, the NSAID, they're not going to do it. In fact, what they're trying to do now is to erase everything that's Black. I'm looking at all that's going on right now, and it's not nice. Anyhow, I don't want to go on and on. What I want to do is to thank my brothers and sisters who would have left where they are to come and sit with us so that we can listen to you, brother, from way across from Jamaica coming here to teach us and to help us to understand that the young minds that we have in our care we should be able to reset it so that they can think positive and think about what some of the things that you have explained to us were doing to the young minds. Because even now, you say your grandmother can remember things from way back then. All our people can remember things because when these older folks get much older and they cannot remember a lot of things, I can remember listening to this old lady, 100 plus, when she would recite rhymes, nursery rhymes. The beggar made by Tennessee. She can remember those things. But then when you ask her about present day things, she can't remember. And it just goes to show that what you're saying and what you're trying to teach us tonight makes a lot of sense. And we will work on it. So, my brothers and sisters here tonight, thank you for coming again. My brother down there, he too would have talked about some of the things that are responsible for our young people. Just not, I don't understand. Important forums like these, years ago they would have been here. Some or the other, when I spoke to him, he said, they are telling him that Dr. Hines, you're coming to Tipperary Yard. They know where he's coming, but they're not coming here to listen. I don't know, maybe if we had gone way down, we always get the crowd way down, because I think that is where the Black consciousness is, by the light side, where those boys lie, and where they sit to talk and gab. Anyhow, we are here and we would have looked at our gathering and we are happy that you did come to listen to us. I want you to know that what my sister said about editors, there is something that she taught us. We used to sing Jamaican folk songs. And what we want to do is to sing the Jamaican national anthem, because you're Jamaican, right? And we're going to do our Buxton battle song. So, should I do the Buxton battle song? Close with Buxton battle song? Yes. Because we're going to close with the Jamaican anthem. Tell me what to do. The anthem first, and then we close with our battle song, the Buxton battle song. Right?
Let's go.
All right, can we stand for the Jamaican anthem? Teacher Carmen. The brains get a little old, so we have to. All right. Okay, we're going to come here and stand with us. Teacher Carmen is up. Yes. We're going to sing your battle song. So
you need my help. Ready?
Yes.
Eternal Father, bless our land. Guide us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our light through countless stars. To our leaders, brave defenders, grant us wisdom from above. Justice, truth be
ours forever, Jamaica land we love. Jamaica, Jamaica, Jamaica land we love. Boston Microphone. Love will not cover in the dust, Boston, my own native land. Thy glorious name shall never rust, oh Boston, my own native land. Remember Frederick's, yes we must, Boston land. Native land, and now we every boy and girl in Buxton, my own native land. His heart and brain all day employed in Buxton, my own native land. To add to our illustrious line of sons and daughters, one times give of their best that we may shine for Buxton, my own native land. To add to our illustrious line of sons and daughters, one times give of their best that we may shine in Buxton, my own native land. Thank you very much, and may you have a peaceful and safe journey home. Thank you very much again for coming.
My final wish is that teachers and preachers could write some of these nursery rhymes in the children's exercise book so they can practice from now on to recite them. That's all right. Thank you very much, everyone.
You want to see